breakdown. He's like, this way. Most of them have like three spaces.
So a lot of you have the pleasure of fielding questions on sustainable project management, do you? Yeah. Well, that's a joy.
It's okay, it's an interesting topic, but wait, I'm already on camera. So, I think there was like a little bit difference in the feedback amount. And that's always an issue, but I mean, as far as what I looked at, it was consistent in the feedback that was given on the market. But there were a few students that had like a lot of comments in the text, and some had just like one or two bubbles. But that was it. But to be fair, when you get on a slippery slope with that very good.
It was badly run. It was badly.
The sustainability, yeah. I think so too. There was not the buy-in from literature. Yeah. Okay. Today we come kind of to the first session to set a little bit the remit and look at different aspects, and we start with the private sector alliances. And if you have done the further reading from last week, we kind of cover pretty much in a little bit more detail the first paper that looked at why you would do a collaborative venture in the first place. Yeah. You have to be a little bit with me because I've basically lost my Prezi that I just edited, and I have a feeling it's still on in my office, which means it's not on the Prezi server, which is a bad idea. So, but we have the PDF, so it's not a problem. Plan B is there. So we cover today really why collaborate in the first point, and then a quick history of partnering. Key issues, some examples, and I hope we can take that as a spin-off. In this seminar today we have our first case scenario where we want to get our head around what can happen in a collaborative effort, what we have to watch out for, and it's actually all about implementation. Doing the contract, working together is fine, yeah, but making it work on the operational level and the project level, that is where it gets really tricky and interesting. Yeah, and we have a look at the implications with I think it's a Korean and American joint venture that went actually pretty terribly wrong, and has its value, of course, for learning. Now, partnership. Do you recognize the young man that is on my face? Yeah, hello, please join here. Who is that? It's actually written. I tried to hide it with my virtual hand, but it didn't really work. Who is it? Yeah, Bill Gates. Yeah, so he is a strong advocate of partnerships. So a partnership is an arrangement in which parties agree to cooperate to advance their mutual interest. And cooperate has a historical notion, which Bill Gates may know or may not know. I prefer actually cooperate. Yeah, collaborate to cooperate. Yeah, there are many reasons behind it, and especially in the UK, it's loaded with particular arrangements. Yeah, so there's a semantic and legal reason actually behind that, why I'm insisting on it. But nonetheless, this is kind of coming from their webpage. Our success has really been based on partnerships from the very beginning. And does anybody know what he's referring to? Microsoft. Yeah, and what? Well, Microsoft and yes, Microsoft was right. Yeah, so that was one of the partnerships that they had at the very beginning. With? Was it Intel? Yeah, Intel. Yes, I can see you have probably read the paper. This is super. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, exactly. And that was as well with IBM. Yeah. I don't think I did. Okay. Oh, yeah, background knowledge. Very, very good. So this was a start, yeah. And who partners? Well, we have the whole range really. If you look at it from a supply chain point, you can look at the whole chain actually as a potential partnership and seeing themselves as a competitive network. That is probably the highest extremes. But who partners? Well, it can be suppliers, customers, employees, potential competitors as well. Throughout, did you have any examples in mind from your industry maybe, or where you want to work? Do you partner? Or rather not?
We partner with the college.
Okay, partner with the college.
Yeah, who essentially are our subcontractor, but we don't treat them as subcontractors. We treat them as partners.
Okay.
Because
So
we're only as good as their delivery.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in a way, it allows you to build a relationship where you can as well say like, okay, this time we run it this way, but in the future we would like to see more of a different sort of delivery just for you.
We were very close to partnering, setting up a training academy.
Okay.
So the partnership wasn't just sort of, you know, because I think partnerships is a widely abused word. You talk to somebody, all of a sudden you're their partner, you know. So, but yeah, we work very closely together.
Okay, very interesting. And it's going all right.
Yeah, the academy's just been binned, but that wasn't anybody's fault. We couldn't align the funding, so that was fine. The partnership's still there.
Okay, so partnership has survived even the shortage of shared income potential, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we have exclusivity agreements and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So to think of a few other industries, what industry is that? Education,
it's
training?
It's education, it's engineering training, yeah.
Okay, engineering training, very specific, very good. Do you have other partnerships in mind, maybe?
Didn't Google do one with a laptop? Google.
Yeah, Samsung.
Samsung, that's it.
Yeah. And there were a few that came out with that. Yeah, there was as well Google Mobile. Yeah, and yeah, a very good example. Yeah, so as well endeavor to. Why do you work together with them actually? This is a good question. I wanted to pose you something, but
why
do you see the benefit in working together with them? Why do you not do it yourself?
Well, because we want to influence their delivery to meet our employer needs more closely. So to do that, it's no good having an adversarial arm's length relationship. You need to influence their training because we're only as good as what they are, and they are a supplier. Yeah. So whatever their output is our output. So, you know, there's every reason to collaborate and be partners.
Yeah. So it's as well a set that they deliver that you don't have the capacity or the willingness to create capacity.
Well, we used to have our own training centre, but they divested in that a while ago.
Yeah.
So we rely on colleges.
Okay. So there must be as well probably a monetary interest, competence-based interest.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, probably with one particular college, you know, it's the contract's for over £400,000. So yeah. we'll play quite a big part in their delivery for engineering.
Yeah, you're probably as well a prime supplier
yes.
for them, indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So often we go in those partnerships, with the hope to really create more value, and compensate as well for something where we may not feel confident or don't have the experience, the competencies, or in the Google example, maybe not the manufacturing capacity and so forth. Yeah. So we have a closer look actually at the drivers of that. Oh, sorry, it's again bad habit. We have an increasing use of alliances. This is between 1996 to 1999. In the last kind of 9 years, you can see probably that we had as well a little bit more aggressive games that went into merger and acquisitions. Especially the bigger companies were quite tempted by that. So, but just to give you a few numbers, between 1996 and 1999, quite some time ago, those with 2 billion or more revenues developed an average of 138 alliances. So there's certainly as well an investment potential in doing something like that, creating securities or avoiding, mitigating risk really. Alone in 2000, you had like 10,000 alliances formed, so there must be a good reason behind it, but we look behind that in a little bit more detail. So I hope this works. I want Ling Q to actually talk us through this. Let's see if this works. Okay, so that is where I have to go sadly back to my Prezi because the link is disabled. This is not good. Okay, shall I just jump in? I will have to deliver you the video too. You have it already on the ELP, but it's basically in a Vimeo format where I can't really corrupt it either. So this is to come maybe as a homework. He does it a lot better than me. So he basically goes into the detail where the different forms of partnerships sit. And he starts here off at looking at collaboration on the pure basis on maybe locality.
Who is this guy? Is he
He's actually a researcher in this area, and I think he belongs to a big consultancy that is specialized on helping you to find a way forward with different partnerships types. And he basically starts off by introducing that as well your supply chain network. So if you contract things out, you kind of start to collaborate on a unique basis. So the incentives to actually work on a relationship or improve actually how you're working together is not set very high. You kind of buy the deal that you are getting, and often that is agreed in the contract. So that is the minimal form of collaboration. So you need very little trust. You normally write the details into the contract, and you monitor it as well according to your contract, and you may have a project manager enforcing as well the interface, that the collaborative effort comes to the success, to the criteria you're after. Now a joint venture is a step further. Here you engage into a partnership where you both, you as a company, see certain benefits in maybe not doing the other part of the of the venture that you have in front of you yourself, because there's a lack of competence. Maybe you don't have a lot of experience, and you would require time to build the capacity, the organizational capacity to actually do it yourself. So the Samsung example with Google was a very good one. Samsung has experience in the mobile world, whilst Google has wonderful interfaces, and makes internet or the whole interface of the computer a pure joy. Well, it's overstated, but there you would certainly see the interface that Samsung came in with the experience of the hardware, and producing and manufacturing it as well, whilst Google had the software expertise, and both, of course, adding reputation. So I think both the Google phone and as well the laptop had Google and Samsung on it, isn't it? Actually, I'm not sure about that. I haven't seen the laptop, I've only seen the mobile. Has anybody seen the laptop? Okay. Well, we have to research that, but in terms of joint venture, it's often a combination of trying to learn from each other as well as skills, sharing resources to make it a profitable venture, and at the same time to mitigate risks. And they come in a wide variety, but we have a closer look in a second at that form. Then a strategic partnership is a step further. So a partnership is really kind of an open commitment. So if you follow the literature recommendations, and a few partnerships have done so, it's a loose agreement where you just, you basically match out your resources, so it's not as romantic as I may describe it here. In the strategic partnership, you make a commitment to do business together. And often you still have a scope of what you're doing, especially if you have a large business. You normally don't promise that you do any kind of business together, but it's a shared effort. Whilst a strategic alliance is a little bit more contractually confined, where you set as well a mission out what you're trying to achieve together. So alliances are normally more on the contractual side, and you are after a mission, aims and objectives. Okay, that was a quick run through. He gives you as well a few examples and talks a little bit about trust versus risk. That is a main indicator, especially when you come from an investment side. But I've broken it, of course, as well down into a little bit more manageable chunks. And there's a little bit repetition, but repeating something is not necessarily a bad thing. So it's really joint ventures. If you look at it, it's a business agreement in which the parties agree to develop for a finite time a new entity and new assets by contributing equity. Now, if you translate that, it's exactly what I just described. Yeah, so equity could be a commitment in capacity, could be manufacturing. I use a lot the term capacity. I'm already in my literature, but so it could be your factory that you are actually using, whilst the other one brings in their factory with a software design. Yeah, so it's basically sharing resources versus as well commitment to maybe learn from each other. So often a joint venture is as well based on the premises that you actually have a skills exchange and a knowledge exchange. But at the same time, that is what gets very thin ice. So some companies that are knowledge companies or have patents, they often don't like that too much. Especially in engineering or technology-driven companies, it gets a very soft line, especially if you work on those projects. It's quite easy that a naive question actually unravels for the engineer of the other company pretty much your business secrets or competitive advantage. But that is basically it. Here you often have as well a separate group, so you need actually a management that is independent from the decision making of the both companies. This is more a legal requirement. In reality, it normally manifests that both companies or joint venture can be multiple companies as well, have still a strong influence, at board level at least.
So with joint ventures, you have specific managers operating within the joint venture who are distinct or not being paid from either company?
Yes, that is the idea. In reality, there are all kind of hybrids. So I know as well joint ventures where they work 60% in the joint venture and 40% still in the other capacity. Actually, that is quite common actually. Yeah, and here the important bit is a joint venture is literally a new company. Yeah, so it has as well its own liabilities, and actually they exercise control over the enterprise and shared revenue and expenses and assets. And normally in a joint venture you have as well a capacity evaluation. So the equity and so basically you match what everybody's bringing in, and normally expenses, assets, revenues and risks are contractually bound to the parties. Yeah? So you're basically accountable to bring that expertise from your company in, if you have assigned to that. Yeah, it gets actually, I have as well in session 6, we do look at a few contracts just to get a feeling for it. It's actually quite detailed on this. So there are often as well market share promises, which can be quite powerful. There are other types of companies such as joint venture limited by guarantee. We have as well in Europe where we have all kind of hybrids. So this depends a little bit on your national system, what contractually and legally is possible, but it gets quite creative to be honest. So joint venture limited by guaranteed with partners holding shares. But that is another option. So this is already going where often the management or the new company is next to the estate of the old company. So this is often where the manufacturing lines are, where you buy capacities, for example, from the joint venture from existing companies. Then the venture can be for one specific project only, when the joint venture is referred to more correctly as a consortium. So this is normally an one-off attempt. So here the Channel Tunnel was a good example, or continuing business relationship is as well a possibility. So if you actually look at a lot of joint ventures, some actually spun out a completely new company that still exists. So there are quite a few around actually. At the moment, actually it was a takeover, but if you look at the turbines industry for power plants, you just had the merger between Siemens and Rolls-Royce, and in reality they are both matching their skills to be actually competitive with the international companies that are in the same business. So here you have the likes of Toshiba and basically as well very big conglomerates that have been very successful, and we built in the next years a lot of power plants. So this is strategic positioning. And they wanted to start as well with joint venture, but in the end, they bought it. So I'm not sure that is a good example, but you get the idea of the consideration. The consortium joint venture is formed when one party seeks technological expertise or technical service arrangement, franchise or brand use agreements, management contracts, rental agreements for one-time contracts, and well, in general as well, access. Yeah? So there are markets, there is expertise, there are maybe patents, so there's a lot more to it. And on the project level, you often have those interfaces that you have to use in your project, that are contractually binding for you. So this is often where it becomes quite meaningful. The joint venture is dissolved when a goal is reached or profit margins are hit. This is as well interesting. Sometimes you have weird scenarios where a project has to create a certain asset value, and then the partners are bought out basically. And there have been a few where that is happening too. One of our case studies that we have in a public-private partnership is actually such a case. Yeah, so quite interesting. Oh, I have better examples here. So here are a few examples. Does anybody recognize this? Or what is this? Well, the names are written. It's something with Land and Rover and then a Jaguar. Well, what was that all about?
That's Tata Steel, isn't it? They took it over, Tata. The owner of Tata.
Yeah.
And merged Jaguar and Land Rover.
And then what happened? Why did they do that?
I'm not actually sure, but but I know that they're together now. They're the same company. Well, they're owned by the same company, but they've still got their separate. Entities.
Yeah. So they're basically actually it was a joint venture between Jaguar and Land Rover, and it has been bought over. Why do you think they came together?
Different competencies, abilities, technological advantages, I would guess.
Yeah. They were renowned in the brand value to create very different value. What was Jaguar famous for? Or what do you associate Jaguar with?
Long, ugly cars.
Ah, this is just heartbreaking. Okay.
Maybe the E-Type.
Yeah.
Luxury cars.
Yeah, luxury cars. And Rover? Land Rover?
Four-wheel drive, off-road,
Yeah.
country vehicles.
Yeah.
Same, luxury cars, Land Rover.
Yeah, it has become that. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So Land Rover in the past was the old military Jeep where you felt every bump, and you would walk as well like this out of the car because it had no power steering. Yeah, so you really knew what you had done. But now you're spot on. Yeah, so they've shifted into the luxury market, Land Rover, and you can see the lights. And a brand joke was this where there were some stars that designed some of the Land Rover special editions. Yeah, again, I'm not really knowledgeable enough for that, but some popular star basically had their own design.
Victoria Beckham.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, and she's a pop star, right?
She designed the Evoque. Yeah. No, she well,
Hi,
She masqueraded as one for some time.
yeah, she put a name to the Evoque. And then she's got a limited edition out that has like rose gold everywhere.
Okay, now there you go. Yeah? So that sounds impressive. Yeah. So you can see that sometimes joint venture is done for a particular purpose, and it has probably a little bit outmatched the traditional strand of Land Rover that we associate Land Rover for. Yeah? But they still do those very reliable cars that you can drive around in the wild, wherever the wild is.
So is Jaguar and Land Rover still one joint venture? They're still one company?
This is a good question. I would have to look into this, but I think they're as well owned by a shareholder majority, and they may belong now to another group. So as far
because it sounds to me like Land Rover got the most out of the deal by entering into the luxury car market. I don't see how it's an advantage Jaguar.
Maybe it's more robust. You know, there was as well. Actually, this is a good point.
Jaguar's kind of reinvented itself though, like in comparison to what it used to be, like bringing out all the F types and stuff, and now it's just totally different.
Right, okay.
I did it for my marketing thing.
Oh, I see. Yeah, very good. Okay. Well, we have a good marketing inside here. I'm very impressed. So, and the F-line does work?
Yeah, my friend's got one actually.
And?
He's got an F-type, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, there you go.
It's definitely not like what it used to be.
An old man's car.
Yeah, it's got a
It was a
press
traditional limousine where you could sit in the back, you had your seat again. Okay. Yeah, okay. But so it has impacted, yeah, certainly on the brand level. Another one, very old one, is actually, are they still in a joint venture? I'm not sure about that. But Sony Ericsson, you may remember them. I remember them from mobiles.
I used to love the Sony Ericssons actually.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, and?
The little slidey phones, yeah. Good. I didn't actually realise that it was Sony Ericsson.
Yeah.
To be honest, we just seen that now.
So where do those companies come from? Sony is?
From Japanese.
Yes. And Ericsson?
Swedish.
Yes, Swedish. Spot on. Yeah. And Ericsson has as well kind of, they still exist, but they're kind of other companies now. So there was as well something going on. But the joint venture literally was essential for the survival at the time. Yeah, and Sony was as well struggling with the mobile side at least. Again, it was mostly for sharing capacities and promoting basically a product that is competitive at the new emerging market. Yeah? And here I'm on very thin ice. I have to admit, what is here the joint venture? Does anybody know?
Rubbish beer. Really bad beer.
Really bad beer.
Coors is alright.
Isn't it?
Yeah, Coors Light.
Cool. So okay, it's two brands, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the first. Okay, so and they basically tried, I think, to reinvent beer drinking culture, and it's as well mixes of beer, isn't it?
Yeah, the adverts are shocking where Jean-Claude Van Damme.
with the mountains.
Yeah.
But you remember it, so
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah, he's got his own like ice igloo disco thing, hasn't he? He's like, come and visit my igloo. So no, you're right.
Okay, so it did resonate. It did resonate. So clearly it made an impression, and Miller was really struggling actually for quite some time. So I think it was as well their survival parachute to not go completely out of business. They are very big in America, but they had issues in the European market, and clearly promoted it well. Yeah, so that is quite impressive actually. Strategic alliances. It's a cooperative agreement between two or more companies in which a common strategy is developed in unison and win-win attitude is adopted by all parties. So here really the key idea is you set out often on a set endeavor. Yeah, it can be as well as short as a project, but normally it's a long-term agreement where you try to build up capacity and position yourself in a market segment.
Is that not exactly the same as a joint venture? The first two points.
No, basically you stay in your company entity, and you basically collaborate. It's not a different company type. Does that make sense? So you basically have a collaborative, cooperative agreement. So you both stay as a legal entity separate, yeah, but you basically cooperate, and legally you are both accountable for it. So this is often, if you do something like that already, you would as well get respectively the risk for your share, yeah, and the other one would carry the risk for their share. The relationship is reciprocal, I can't say the word, with each partner prepared to share specific strengths with the other, thus leading power to the enterprise. So there's often as well this intent of learning from each other because they want to go into a particular market, or maybe, so when I say market, this can be product based, this can be as well geographically based, that you want to go into a new national market that you are interested in. A pooling of resources, investment and risk occurs for mutual gain. So this is as well quite interesting. Normally they monitor as well very closely in what goes actually into this. So this is often as well a centralized department that looks after that. Actually at this university we have that too as a department for partnership and alliances, which is quite interesting. Falls short of forming a legal partnership, so you don't have a new entity. That's just an agreement that you collaborate. Yeah. Again, super examples. Oh, wait, I was too. Okay, now I need help. What was Starbucks? What was Alliance here? Does anybody know? Did Starbucks have an alliance? Actually, more. Where does Starbucks actually have? I think they have actually. There's probably an alliance. Have you noticed something here on campus? Well, what happened here on campus? Have you ever seen Starbucks?
They act as a supplier. They supply Starbucks.
I think that they have bought the license from what was formerly Costa. So Northumbria had always different coffees. You may not know this, but in 2005 that was yes. How would you describe that? There was no brand basically behind it. It was our own Northumbria coffee, and then there was Costa that went into a strategic alliance with a cluster of universities. So you don't just find it here; you probably find it across England in a few universities. And it's a partnership, it's an alliance basically to build a coffee culture that suits the customer, which we couldn't develop before. Yeah, but in that sense, there were as well other alliances actually. Starbucks went for alliance with the food supplies. Yeah, if you go into Starbucks, you will see their branded foods, and they're basically in an alliance. So they make the coffee and the drinks, and the food is basically an alliance agreement, and they use Starbucks as a brand because it's popular. And you may have not noticed, but if you do read the fine print of the sandwich in the Starbucks shop, you will see it's different companies. Yeah.
They've got a rainforest alliance as well.
Oh, okay. So this go. Wait. Ignore my example. So this sounds better. So what?
I don't know. I think it just said on the cup rainforest alliance. So.
Okay. So but this is not an alliance. They have just bought that. Or.
Does that mean that they're looking after trees? Is that what
I think it's charity, yeah.
This means probably their own land somewhere in a rainforest, and okay, and look after it. Go and put some water on. Yes, I don't. So here gets bees. Yeah? And how far the details work, this is a different question. Yeah. What was with Apple? Does anybody know there the strategic alliance? Was there a strategic alliance? Who is hidden behind Apple?
Microsoft for a time, a long time ago.
Yes, it was actually. This is a good point. Yeah. So Microsoft was actually as well behind it for a very long time. That is where all these wonderful disputes came from.
Samsung,
Yeah, Samsung. Oh, I'm not familiar with this. Here you are. Yeah. What was there?
I think it's behind the Apple.
Oh, they had a big lawsuit, didn't they, over the claims? It was something to do with touchscreen, and I think they'd worked together, and it was Samsung's idea, and they sued them or something.
So you can see these large corporations have a lot of alliances, but yeah, they probably developed the screen together, and that is true. They were fighting who had the patent rights. Yeah, and
was like Apple as well.
Yeah.
That was, I think, for selling their music without the right licenses. I think that just, yeah. Okay, there are a lot. Before I even pretend that I know all of them, yeah, I don't. So I really had very concrete examples here in mind. Nokia and Microsoft was another one, but yeah, as well with Apple, you will see the interfaces. There's still Microsoft that you can use on an Apple, which they've kind of rebranded. So there are a lot of strategic alliances, and if you look at it in a comparison, the main difference is really in a joint venture, the companies start and invest in a new company that's jointly owned by both of the parent companies, and has independent decision making, or should act independently in the interest of the joint venture. Versus a strategic alliance is a legal agreement between two or more companies to share access to their technology, trademarks, or other assets. And yeah, assets have it in it, so there are a lot of interpretation. Is there a question to this, or confusion?
Yeah, I just thought the previous slide had said that it wasn't a legal partnership.
strategic alliance?
It's a legal agreement, so you don't have a different. So the strategic partnership is the softest. You just say like, hey, I want to work together with you, and we are doing this, and we both signed this agreement that we work together to enhance our business, and that is just an agreement. It has very little legal validity. So basically, if you have disputes on that basis, you have to establish basically grounds backwards from where you started, and everything that you did do at the time belongs to everybody. So you have to come to a settlement, and who gets what. And if you are still in dispute, then they normally split it on asset value basis. Yeah.
One of the definitions for the joint venture was that it's for a finite time.
Yeah, this is not true necessarily. So normally, this is something you can write into the contract. So joint ventures, for example, for mega projects, we do that a lot. Yeah, so Crossrail, for example, you will see that they have a very long joint venture between different companies just for that one project, and then you will see that they probably won't actually sustain it afterwards.
So it doesn't always have to be a finite time agreement. It can be
a lot of the joint ventures that I've worked with, they're still together. So if you look at any of the PepsiCo brands, you will still see that Walker's still in a joint venture with Frito-Lay. Yeah, and that has been going on now for 40 years. Maybe there's somewhere a contract that says 56 years joint venture, but I'm not aware of that. Yes, so that there's the possibility. So joint ventures are as well often used for bigger projects as a kind of start and end date, maybe with maintenance as well. Yeah, the handover time, that you have accountabilities in that time to basically have a closer tie to risk in the operations as well when it comes to the trial time. That is something that you could use joint ventures for. Yeah. And strategic alliance again is more setting kind of this legal agreement that you do commit your resources, and that can be very specific. Yeah? So the case that we have later on, you will see it's actually extreme specific. It's a particular market segment that they want to get in a particular country in exchange for helping the other company building smaller cars.
Yeah, so the previous slide does say a cooperative arrangement, but it's more contractual arrangement.
Yeah, this is why I don't like the cooperative, but I should really take that out. Yeah, so you're spot on. So so if you look at the joint venture, it's really a new company where you pull the resources together. It's like yeah.
In a joint venture, does it often mean that both companies can still remain independent whilst creating a separate entity?
This is exactly the idea. Yeah? So liabilities are basically just with the joint venture. Yeah?
So with Sony Ericsson, there was still a separate Sony and a separate Ericsson.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
So if anything goes wrong, then you can step away. Well, you don't step away. You still have the liability for what it's actually founded on, and then as well the resource agreements. So this can be as well asset value from the original groups that would have a liability, but the companies can then buy that out. So if the joint venture goes against the wall, they can say like, okay, we buy our manufacturing capacity out for 100 million and still let the ship then sink for a few billion worth of assets. Yeah. So
the joint venture of Time Warner confused me at the time, because Time's a magazine, unless it does a lot of other things, and then you've got Warner Brothers, and it just seemed a bit odd that they should come together. I don't know what they hope to gain from it, or whether they gain anything from it. Time Warner, just why? Well,
I suppose in especially film industry, you have often people that have a lot of good stories, and the copyright on a lot of stuff, and then the other ones that know how to make good films and that know how the special effects work. And there are shareholder companies that have been founded that basically have increasing profits because exactly of that scenario. There was a joint venture between a company that kind of the copyright to all the old history stories, and you will see them now in cinema very soon. Yeah? So that's exactly the idea. Yeah, it makes sense if you want to have a lot of old stories as well in movies. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, and here again, it doesn't create a new strategy. But don't worry, we have actually all the case scenarios now to actually look into this. and to get our head a little bit closer around it, and look as well how this actually applies to us as project managers, because it has very different implications. I hope you see the magnitude. Yeah? In one, your company is liable for everything in the project, so there may be more risk averse, whilst in joint ventures it's a very good engine to try new stuff. If you're experimental and you want to combine all the newest technologies into one project, you probably do it in a joint venture, to be honest. Yeah, just for legal reasons, and then experiment around. Yeah. Strategic alliance. The 5 criteria for a strategic alliance is critical to the success of core business goal and objective. So you really set that out. Yeah, what the relationship is about, what you're trying to do. So, for example, it could be a simple. So controversial example, yeah? Mozambique at the time wasn't a country that had beverage drinks, and I remember that. Pepsi and Coca-Cola, very unethically, no, it wasn't unethical, but they decided that only one company would try to go in the market, and that would be their country market. In exchange, Tanzania was given. So it's similar markets, but you have sometimes agreements like that. And it was a strategic alliance for bottling and all the supply stuff that you do with Coke. To get a Coke, you need the liquid in the bottle, and the liquid itself is a chemical compound that you mix with water and certain carbonized water, actually, usually, and then you basically fume it up a little bit, and then you have the wonderful sparkling drink, and they shared capacity for that, to build the infrastructure. So, yeah, key was here the goal and objectives. So to develop the markets, once it's developed, the alliance was over. They could both go into the same market, because it was a market that would drink fizzy drinks. Yeah. So that's that is probably like a very grand example, but you get the idea. Critical to the development or maintenance of core competency or source of competitive advantage. This is often how it's framed, but as in one of the papers, you may have read that already, the competencies is a very loose topic or term that is interpreted depending on your particular scenario. So that is always something that needs like proper definition, potentially as well legally. Blocks of competitive threat can be as well a motivation for this. Creates or maintains strategic choices for the firm, and mitigates a significant risk to the business. Again, you can see that as any kind of form. You may not have like a manufacturing line that you need from the other place. Yeah, you could build it probably yourself, but it would take a lot of upfront investment. Yeah, so this risk would go away with something like that. Yeah. Now, when you look at the paradox of competition and cooperation, and I have as well these other video. There's another video from last week that is as well additional reading. It's from, I think it's a pharma company. Is it BASF or something like that? But basically, they basically advocate as well that cooperation is the way forward. But if you look at it, you have there's certainly a notion of slippage. So if you look at competition and cooperation, you will see as well in a cooperative effort, you will still compete maybe on a basis of coming up with the best solutions. Yeah? How can you contribute to this? How can the other party contribute to this? And that is something you should keep as well within a project to actually get the best ideas, information, solutions promoted to the forefront. But what it does mean is that you may not compete directly against each other on the platform of doing the same thing. Yeah? So if you look at it, competition, discrete organization, clear, sharp boundaries, negative sum game. So you win, I lose. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now in a cooperation, you have basically embedded organization. So there's one side of the unit that does their service, but they have to collaborate as well across their organizational basis into the other organizational basis. So hence you are one organization coming from two organizations. I hope that makes sense. Hence, embedded organization. With that comes fuzzy boundaries. So often you get a lot of insight as well how the other company is doing things. Now that can be desirable, can not be desirable, depending on where you stand. And the idea really being, from a game theory perspective, is a positive sum game. So you both gain due to the cooperation. Yeah? And then you have as well the altering boundary. Network level strategy sits somewhere in between, where you work, where you kind of commit to a long-term relationship with your supply chain or your customers, but in reality you still do it on a contract-to-contract basis. So that then sits somewhere in between, and then you fight basically these opposition or opposing forces, if you want. Yeah. Oh. So what are the options for developing resources? Alliances ranging from formal to informal gaining access due to additional resources. Actually, often with alliances you have as well kind of a competence or capacity recognition where you as well evaluate, where you may have to bring training in or build capacity together. Actually, this is often why you set up in alliances. Now here we have as well the forms that I already spoke about. Mergers and acquisition is really formal and buying in resources. From like mergers, really buying the resources, to acquisitions where you basically buy the whole organizational capacity. Sometimes as well to kind of separate it and have a few more businesses. There are many reasons for that. Then internal development is again the core competencies, or prefer to think as well of organizational capacity. And here you have unilaterally or helped by another building up of competencies, and this is as well often the source that is perceived as a competitive advantage. Now we have different advantages and disadvantages. If you look at the internal development, so we start from the bottom upwards, the advantage is certainly you keep control, retain all benefits. Now this is of course only if you train your own people and you build up the capacity. If you go with a training service, you just partner with somebody else in that case, or contract that out. So disadvantages normally referred to in the literature, limited to own resources, and you take all the risk. So it can go as well wrong, but that is on each business. So you want to make sure you have the right mix. Merger and acquisition, again, to be fair, this is a summary. We look actually a lot more refined at that in the future. Yeah? Mergers and acquisitions, ready-made products, markets, know-how is there. Yeah, so they know as well how to do it. They may already do it in another part for another product or service. And you have as well the organization already there. Yeah? So you don't have to kind of build up that working together, that everybody knows what their role is individually on the project level. Yeah? So with the disadvantages is difficult to value. Yeah? So it becomes, well, basically normally you go in with a due diligence and you look what you have, what does the other one have, and then evaluate where's the decision making sitting, who has the power in that relationship. It's a heroified summary of what you could probably describe more accurately. And then as well difficult to integrate potentially. Yeah? So you will see actually that a lot of mergers and acquisitions, the biggest problem is really to make them merge and then to make them work collaboratively together. There are often as well existing culture, and that can be hindering, especially if you try to cut costs. If that is the intent, then merger and acquisition is a very delicate undertaking. Alliance.
How does mergers work with due diligence and shareholders?
It's evaluation, how much you pay.
Yeah. How does that tend to work? You've got two companies agreeing to come together for a particular purpose for a reason.
Yeah.
You'll have shareholders of this company, you'll have shareholders of that company, and this company's asset value or whatever might be bigger than this company, but you're merging them together to create a whole.
Yeah.
So how does...
So you have normally a compensation being paid, yeah, and or many shareholders pitch as well for the outlook of greater profits. So the shareholders are normally quite into mergers and acquisition because you create more
economies of
value.
scale advantages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more net value as well, potentially. You know, when you consider something like that, you often do a capacity consideration. So what is your organizational capacity? And then you look, oh, they're a lot more effective on...
What do you mean by capacity?
Yeah, this can be pretty much everything. This can be how you, how quick and effective you put screws into a car frame, and connect the... It's actually not screws, but anyway, it can be as practical as that. Up to like whole product segments, or sub-products that you're producing, where they know that the quality is higher, where you know that they can do it a lot quicker, they have a lot less waste, or they buy less resources and still kind of can produce the same quantity. So those are ways of starting to measure it. But you're quite right, this is very specific from industry and product to industry and service and product and so forth. So you have to every time look at your ratios really on the performance basis of your industry. That is where the due diligence becomes actually quite tricky. Okay. But if you look at it in a project level, I bet we as a small seminar group could already do this. Because you will have already the expertise on the project level, and you see the skills. So if we could do the exercise and probably build something up like that quite easily. Does that part?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the integration is then of course trying to make it work again on the organizational level. Alliances, pool resources, know-how, spread risk, and capital commitment. So this is very important. This is often as well as a minimum defined. Often they hope for more. They're often as well clauses. If this happens, then you have to do that, and and I do that too. Something like that. That is always quite interesting. And then partners' goals may conflict, organizational confusion, lose control of know-how and technology. This is the biggest concern often with those type of arrangements. And actually a lot of alliances have probably started with the intent of getting to know what the other one is doing there exactly. So there is as well the side to it. Oh, and I'm already running over time. Okay, we stop at that point. Any questions? Okay, more in the seminars and a cool case study to come. Maybe you want to familiarize yourself with the world of DU and General Motors. That is what we're looking at later on. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and I see you 6 this time sharpish. I know now where the room is. I won't come here back. So this is quite good.